had been exiled from its native city 40 years earlier. Growing up with an acute sense of injustice about their exile and a determination to restore the clan name to greatness, Aeneas Piccolomini was a man with a mission. Highly intelligent and an astute diplomat, Piccolomini rose through secular and ecclesiastical rank to become Pope in 1458. An avid humanist, poet, historian, biographer, educational theorist and topographer, his most famous work was, and still is, his autobiography, The Commentaries. Quoting from this, his sense of pride is palpable as he records his first official journey as Pope Pius II. Quote, "All along his route, the people poured out to greet him. The priests, bearing holy relics, offered prayers for his happiness as he passed. Boys and girls wearing wreaths of laurel and carrying olive branches wished the great bishop long life and felicity. Everywhere the road was thronged with people and strewn with fresh grasses. The houses of the towns and cities were carpeted with precious fabrics, the churches of God splendidly decorated." 2 points are important to pick out from this. The first is the bringing out of relics. In the medieval and early modern period, the most prestigious object that one could possess was a sacred relic, which were believed to have the ability to perform miracles, for example, bringing about healing, levitation, or apparitions of Christ or the Virgin. David Hume was to pronounce forcefully on the falsehood of miracles, but in the 15th century, multiple witness reports were to be believed. Relics from the Middle East were used by Byzantine emperors as diplomatic gifts to curry favour with important allies in the West. Gifts from saints' body parts, like the clippings of St. Peter's toenails, to stains from Christ's teardrops, fragments of the holy umbilical cord, the holy foreskin, and the miracle-working tail of the donkey upon which Christ rode into Jerusalem. To be in the presence of a sacred relic was to have a direct and open line of communication with God, without the need of cleric as intermediary. Pilgrimage sites housing holy relics thus took on special cultural agency as gateways to the divine, deriving large economic benefits from miracle-seeking visitors. Relics were thus of huge political value to whoever owned them. The second point to note from that quotation is the importance of the ritual of processions, deeply embedded in Renaissance culture. Throughout his distinguished career as high-powered secretary and diplomat, Pius had travelled extensively through Europe, as far north as Scotland, witnessing from within the procession itself grand parades amidst meandering retinues of sumptuously robed officials. During that first papal journey of 1459, Pius revisited the small hilltop village of his birth, Corsignano, a sleepy settlement of only a few hundred farm workers. Whilst there, he conceived the idea of rebuilding the heart of the village and renaming it Pienza as an architectural memorial to himself and the Piccolomini clan. Unprecedented for such a tiny place, it was given its own bishop, thus elevating Corsignano to the city of Pienza. Legal measures were put in place that would guarantee continued Piccolomini control following the Pope's demise, a case of perfect family patronage which would keep Pius's name alive for centuries to come. Pienza balances precariously along the edge of an escarpment. Then the land drops away steeply to the valley of the river Orcha, before rising up again to Pius's favourite mountain, Monte Amiata. The centre of the village was purchased by Pius, flattened, and within 3 years the building seen here in blue had been erected. This miniature city is the first example of humanist urban planning that actually came to fruition, designated since 1996 a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Pius gave Pienza a new cathedral, piazza, town hall, water supply and palaces. He endowed the cathedral with many large altarpieces. He gifted the new bishop a crozier, a richly embroidered coat, choir books, tapestries, incense gondolas and holy water vessels. But for Pius, the founding of Pienza was much more than an act of architectural and artistic patronage. This much is intimated by his donation to the new city of the most up-to-date scientific devices, of a clock and a painted mappamondo, intended to lift Pienza out of its sleepy rural incarnation onto a plane of self-recognition within terrestrial time and place. But even this wouldn't suffice for Pius. Such was the extent of his intellectual, dynastic and personal ambition. The founding of Pienza had to be the optimum conceivable event of cosmographical proportions. I've argued elsewhere, using a phenomenological approach to the architecture of Pienza and embodied movement through its spaces, that Pius always had processions in mind. By the year 1460, the building works that were physically transforming Old Corsignano were already in full flow. He would already have been devising in his head a plan for an inaugural procession and the consecration of his new cathedral. Something, however, was missing. The dignity of any church in the Renaissance was customarily measured according to the number and importance of its holy relics. Therefore, for Pienza to have status, a relic was absolutely mandatory. Backtracking a few years, in May 1453, Constantinople, or today's Istanbul, here ringed in black, had fallen to the Turks, the red shaded area marking the then extent of the Ottoman Empire in time to grow greater still. For a few years in nearby Patras, in today's Greece, the Ottoman Turks allowed its sovereign, Thomas Paleologus, to continue his rule. But the Turks on his doorstep were constantly threatening. Paleologus was worried about the safety of a cherished Christian relic that was housed in Patras, the holy relic of the head of St. Andrew the Apostle. Backtracking still further, following Christ's crucifixion, St. Andrew, brother of St. Peter, had become a great traveller in his Christian mission, visiting as far north as Russia, and finally settling in southern Greece, preaching and converting multitudes, for which in the end he himself was executed, becoming a Christian martyr. After his crucifixion, Andrew's head was severed from his body and deposited into this silver reliquary and retained at Patras, much revered for centuries. Following the fall of Constantinople in 1453, and as a precaution against desecration by the warmongering Mohammedan Turks, Thomas Paleologus moved St. Andrew's head to a secret place of temporary safety. When Pius heard of this, he sent instructions to Paleologus to deliver the precious cargo in person to Rome, Pius promising that as soon as it was safe to do so, he would restore the relic to its former home in Patras. Thus, the sojourn of St Andrew's Head on Italian soil was always presented as a temporary measure. The much publicised crescendo of the Relic's arrival was its procession into Rome during Easter week of 1462. Pius had mapped out the 2-mile processional route and completely replanned St Peter's Piazza to include a wide set of ceremonial steps, 2 colossal statues, a fountain, and the loggia of benediction, all since replaced by Bernini's Baroque. The procession through Rome, the bustling crowds, the hanging tapestries, the speeches, the cheers and the tears are all described by Pius in cinematographic detail, not omitting to mention the Apostle Andrew himself as an active agent, miraculously warding off cataclysmic weather conditions. Pius had insisted that for the procession through Rome, all should go on foot as far as their feet would carry them. The import of the occasion to be experienced as a panoramic spectacle unfolding with each new step. Pius well understood what Elias Canetti recently identified in his book on the psychopathology of crowds and power, namely the unifying effect of a crowd directed forward in movement to a given destination. St Andrew's Head, or rather most of it, was placed into a brand new reliquary and housed in a chapel freshly dedicated to St Andrew in Old St Peter's. This was Pius's opportunity to bestow on his personal city of Pienza a sacred relic of its own. In transferring the Apostle's skull from the old container to the new, Pius kept back the mandible, the lower jawbone, a method of permanently retaining a fragment of the relic on Italian soil when the sacred head would eventually be returned to Patras. In splitting relics, the power of each part, it was believed, was as full of potency as the original whole. The jawbone was put back into the old reliquary and earmarked for destination Pienza. In an age when time was still measured according to holy days in the calendar, the inaugural procession in Pienza and the consecration of the new cathedral would naturally take place on a Saint's Day. For any great civic or church event, however, a Saint's Day on its own was not enough. A battle couldn't be fought, a cornerstone couldn't be laid without prior consultation of an astrologer to ensure that the configuration of the stars would exert a benign force. For Renaissance ritual, the fixed liturgical calendar of the saints and the shifting rhythm of astral events had to align in divine cosmographical harmony. In the 15th century, magic, Hermeticism, medieval astrology and modern astronomy overlapped and intertwined in blurred and varied forms. The date planned for the consecration of the cathedral was the feast of the beheading of St John the Baptist, 29th of August 1462. The choice of date was determined by the fact that that feast was also the date of the autumnal equinox, one of the 2 points in the year when day and night are of equal length. As will soon become clear, the autumnal equinox would have manifest consequences during the dedication proceedings. The town plan and architecture of Pienza rely a natural route for a procession, passing from the cathedral piazza and east along the Corso Rosalino, circling in an anti-clockwise direction to rejoin the Corso inside the west gate. The piazza must have been an explosion of sense experience. Festive colour, tapestries, flags, ceremonial garb, the fresh smell of festooned greenery and scattered flowers, the sound of musical instruments and excited voices. Custom demanded that the procession be preceded in the piazza by a sermon by the city's bishop-elect, the intention of which was to whip up an atmosphere of heightened spirituality, the presence of a holy relic, usually soliciting tears. At a parallel moment the previous year in Rome, Pius recorded that there was no one who did not weep in the presence of the relic. Quote, "There was profound silence except for the sobs of those who beat their breasts and couldn't control their tears." The principles for discerning the supernatural were known to literate and illiterate alike, women and men, clergy and laity. Shedding communal tears was the visible manifestation of invisible emotions, the movement of the heart in response to an unearthly power. Protocol demanded the processional order. At the front, standard bearers, then equerries carrying hats of crimson velvet balanced on long staffs, 2 master ushers holding silk-covered rods, 12 footmen with lighted torches, then 2 clerks carrying perpetually burning candles in silver lanterns. The reliquary of the Apostle's head would have been carried beneath the baldacchino, a portable fabric canopy emblazoned with the Piccolomini crest. The Pope too was borne aloft in his portable seat. If crowds pressed too close, the almoner threw out coins to scatter people away. As Canetti observes in Crowds and Power, the ritual itself, quote, "the movement of the priests in their stiff, heavy canonicals, their measured steps, is the element in any religion which has the most immediate effect on an assembly of believers." As the procession shuffled along the Corso, eyes would be drawn to the right to the breathtaking views between the narrow, shady alleyways, glimpses of meadows, vineyards, fruit fields, and the Pope's beloved Monte Amiata. At the east gate, more views out across the fields and hills beyond, then a sharp turn to the left. The procession inched through the Via della Casa Nuova, the street of the new houses, ordered by Pius for those dispossessed of their homes by his otherwise unforgiving building programme, his brutal colonisation of this rural settlement. Nudging its way back onto the Corso, the procession must have gathered once more in the piazza in front of the majestic facade of the new cathedral. It will be recalled that the 29th of August was also the date of the autumnal equinox. Supposing the Pope, cardinals and participants regrouped around the piazza in time for midday, they would then be witness to a miracle performed by the Holy Relic of St. Andrew. At noon occurred Il Gioco d'Ombra sulla Piazza, the play of shadow on the piazza, whereby the cathedral operated as a colossal sundial, casting its great dark shadow to fall fully, squarely and exactly into the articulated grid of the piazza, with the oculus of the facade matching the white paved circle in the centre of the piazza. A phenomenon not recorded in the commentaries, but unlikely to be a coincidence. The complicated calculations that can calibrate the axis and height of the new church and the size and tilt of the new piazza with the astrological equinox meridian would have required the greatest mathematical minds of the age. There were those in Pius's circle who qualified. For example, Paolo da Pozzo Toscanelli, the brilliant Florentine mathematician and cosmographer who had calculated the gnomon for Florence Cathedral, seen here, which records the summer solstice to within half a second. It seems perfectly consistent with Pope Pius II's character and ambition that in his own memorial to himself he would seek to make a statement of such cosmic proportions, recruiting the miraculous fall of the equinoctial shadow to play a part in his own dedication ceremony. Pius had directed his architect to design the cathedral interior in Gothic style, with tall, light-filled side aisles, Gothic wooden choir stalls, and the Pope's cathedra positioned directly below the huge central window. The light flooding through has the effect of creating an incandescent aureole above the Pope, with, in the right conditions, a shadow on the window of Pius's favourite mountain, silhouetted against the glass. By way of a postscript, whilst the removal of St Andrew's head to Italy had always been presented as a temporary measure, in fact it was only in 1964, 500 years later, that the Holy Relic was finally returned to the Greek Orthodox Church of St Andrew at Patras, reported by the New York Times as a gesture of goodwill, in fact, a promise long overdue. It seems, meanwhile, that St Andrew's holy jawbone wasn't missed. With its endowment to Pienza, Pius instituted a feast day there that the town had never had before, the feast day of St Andrew, still celebrated there annually today. But once the papal retinue had returned to Rome and left the farm workers to their own devices, the Holy Relic must have been carried out for traditional weather blessing processions, to exorcise evil spirits from the air, and as protection for crops against disease, traditionally chanting the opening words of the Gospels while showing the miracle-working relic to the four quarters of the earth. The donation of the power-laden Holy Relic was the crucial vivifying act of Pius's patronage. Today, the little city of Pienza is still a tour de force in memorialising Pius's name, a time when global tourism, with its coachloads of sightseers, has taken up the baton on Pius's behalf.